one sentence that will make a narcissist fear you forever. There is a moment in every person's life when they must decide who truly holds the pen to their identity. Narcissists thrive on confusion, on your need for their approval, on the fear that without them you are nothing. But the moment you speak one truth, one sentence, that declares your independence from their illusion, everything shifts. Power changes hands. The hunter becomes the haunted, and the one who once controlled the atmosphere now fears the clarity in your voice. Today, we uncover that sentence, the one declaration that ends manipulation and begins liberation. I do not need you to validate who I already know I am. This one sentence has the power to collapse the entire false throne a narcissist has built in your life. You see, the secret to a narcissist's influence is not their confidence, it is your doubt. As long as you are unsure of your identity, they can weave their approval in front of you like bait, luring you into cycles of pleasing, proving, and performing. But the moment you speak this sentence, something seismic shifts in the spirit. You are saying, the mirror you hold no longer reflects my truth. That's what terrifies them, not your anger, not your silence, not your distance, but your certainty. Because narcissists only thrive where identity is unguarded. They depend on your hunger to be seen, known, and affirmed by them. They inflate themselves by convincing you that your value is only as real as their recognition of it. But when you know who you are, their power dissolves like mist under sunlight. You become untouchable, not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. Let me tell you something fundamental. No human being was ever designed to define another. We were created to reflect, to encourage, to sharpen, but not to assign worth. Only the Creator defines creation, and when you accept that truth, no one's opinion becomes necessary for your confidence. A narcissist fears that awakening more than anything else, because now your soul is no longer on their leash. Now you won't jump at their praise, and you won't shrink at their criticism. You become immune to the very currency they deal in validation. Imagine a manipulator trying to control a person who cannot be seduced by applause or shamed into silence. That's not just inconvenient for them, it's threatening. It strips them of their illusion of power. It unplugs their influence from your heart. This sentence, I do not need you to validate who I already know I am, is not just a boundary, it's a revelation. It's a declaration that you have moved from seeking identity to walking in it. That's why it terrifies them, because validation is the leash, and clarity is the sword that cuts it. When you live by this principle, you no longer chase peace, you carry it. You no longer beg for approval, you embody assurance. You no longer dance to their moods, you walk to your mission. That sentence doesn't just break their power, it rebuilds your personhood. It says, I was valuable before you noticed me. I was whole before you touched me. I am complete even as you withdraw from me. That kind of strength is what narcissists run from, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted. You must understand, narcissists don't target the weak. They target the unaware, and once you become aware of who you are, the game ends. They will try to test you, to provoke you, to see if you'll still flinch at their disapproval or melt at their attention. But when you stand firm in that truth, when yourself, worth no longer sits in their hands, they realize something fatal to their ego. They cannot control you, and if they cannot control you, they cannot use you. And if they cannot use you, they will eventually leave you, not because you are worthless, but because you are now too powerful to be handled with manipulation. And that, my friend, is the moment of your emancipation. This is not about arrogance. It is about authority. It is about reclaiming what you once outsourced, the power to say, I know who I am, I know what I carry, I know what I deserve, That sentence is not a weapon against others. It is a weapon against deception. It breaks the lie that your identity must be confirmed by another person. It silences the voice that says you need someone to clap for you before you can feel significant. It is not a rejection of people. It is a restoration of self. That one sentence is a sword drawn in silence, and it slays every manipulative tactic the narcissist thought would bind you. Let it echo in your heart today. I do not need you to validate who I already know I am. That is not just a sentence. It is a shield. It guards your mind from lies, your emotions from games, and your destiny from detours. Say it until it becomes your inner law. Say it until their praise no longer moves you and their rejection no longer wounds you. Say it until you walk into rooms and feel no need to impress anyone. Say it until your presence no longer seeks permission to exist. That kind of clarity will make a narcissist tremble, not because you are dangerous, but because you are no longer available for their illusions. They cannot fear what they can control, but they will always fear the one who has discovered their true identity and no longer asks for permission to be it. Your control ends where my clarity begins. This sentence is a line in the sand, a line that, once drawn, shifts the entire balance of power in any relationship with a narcissist. You see, confusion is the soil where control grows. When a narcissist can blur your thoughts, cloud your convictions, and fog your vision, they can lead you anywhere, even into destruction, and make you believe it was your idea. They do not dominate by force, they dominate by distortion. Their greatest weapon is not what they say, it's how they twist what you think. But the moment clarity enters the room, manipulation flees. Clarity is a mirror that reflects every hidden motive. Clarity is a light that exposes shadows. And when you carry clarity, you no longer walk in their maze. That terrifies them, because if you can see the game, you can refuse to play it. If you can name the tactic, you can nullify its power, and when you say, your control ends where my clarity begins, you're not just making a statement, you're serving an eviction notice to every lie they've built in your mind. Narcissists don't need to physically dominate you. They just need you confused long enough to make you question your own intuition. That's why they gaslight you. That's why they deny what they did even when the evidence is clear. That's why they rewrite history to suit their image. But when clarity shows up, you begin to see patterns. You begin to connect the dots. You begin to realize that what felt like love was actually a leash. You realize that the praise they gave was a setup, not a gift. You begin to understand that their apologies were not repentance, but resets to regain control. That realization is the beginning of freedom. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with focus. You stop reacting, and you start recognizing. You stop defending yourself, and you start discerning the spirit behind their words. That's when control begins to unravel, because a narcissist can only control what you don't understand. But when you understand the dynamic, you rewrite the rules, you regain your voice, you reclaim your space, and you reestablish yourself as the gatekeeper of your own soul. Clarity is not just seeing the truth, it's standing in it. It's not enough to recognize manipulation, you must also refuse to tolerate it. And that is where fear grips the narcissist, because as long as they could make you second-guess yourself, they had leverage. But now, with clarity, you begin to trust your perception again. You stop needing them to explain things you already understand. You stop apologizing for emotions they told you were too sensitive. You stop letting them redefine right and wrong based on how it benefits them. Clarity is not just intellectual, it is spiritual. It realigns your soul with truth. It reconnects you with your purpose, and it places a divine boundary around your mind that cannot be crossed without consequence. Let me tell you something. You are not hard to love. You were just in an environment where confusion was labeled love. You are not too much. You were simply around someone who needed you small to feel big. That revelation only comes with clarity, and that clarity is what disarms every manipulative tactic they once used against you. Because once you are clear, you don't fall for cycles anymore. You don't get pulled into chaos just to prove your loyalty. You don't chase them when they give you the silent treatment. You don't explain yourself endlessly, trying to win their approval. You don't crumble under guilt trips or ride the roller coaster of their moods. You have stepped off their stage, and they can no longer write your script. That is what they fear, not that you hate them, but that you've outgrown the lie that they are necessary for your peace. And once you realize that peace is your birthright, not something they can give or take, you become untouchable. When you say, your control ends where my clarity begins, you're declaring spiritual independence. You are no longer willing to be the puppet in someone else's drama. You're no longer investing your energy trying to please someone committed to misunderstanding you. You are free, not because they let you go, but because you let go of the illusion that they were your anchor. You never needed their permission to be whole. You just needed the clarity to remember who you were before they confused you. So speak it boldly. Your control ends where my clarity begins. Let that become the mantra in your mind. Let it steady your voice when they try to twist your words. Let it guard your heart when they try to stir up guilt. Let it guide your feet when you feel the pull of old patterns, because clarity is not just protection, it is power. It puts you back in alignment with who you were always meant to be, and from that place you will not be manipulated, minimized, or misled ever again. Clarity is the end of their illusion, and the beginning of your authority. I am not impressed by power without purpose. These are the words that dismantle the illusion a narcissist hides behind. Because a narcissist doesn't thrive off real strength, they thrive off the appearance of strength. They crave admiration, attention, and the illusion of superiority. They build thrones made of ego, charm, and manipulation, hoping you will kneel before their status, their accomplishments, or their charisma. But when you look at them and say, I am not impressed, you shake the very foundation of their false identity. You see, to a narcissist, admiration is oxygen. They use charm as bait and power as a performance, but behind all the noise is emptiness, a hollow pursuit of validation with no real direction. The moment you stop being dazzled by their surface and start demanding substance, they panic. Because their influence was never built on purpose. It was built on performance, and you just rejected the show. True power is not loud, it's aligned. It is rooted in vision, in responsibility, in service. Purpose gives power its direction, but narcissists don't carry that kind of power. They accumulate influence to glorify themselves, not to build others. They want control, not contribution. And when you refuse to be impressed by the spotlight they stand in, you remind them that real leadership is not about attention, but about intention. They want you to be captivated by what they have, so you won't question what they lack. But once you start looking deeper, once you start asking, what is your power building beyond yourself, you begin to strip away the layers. You stop being mesmerized by titles, money, charm, or dominance. You stop applauding their image and start evaluating their impact, and that is when the fear sets in. You see, a narcissist fears the person who cannot be fooled. They fear the one who can stand in the presence of power and remain unmoved unless it carries purpose. Because now They cannot use their success to silence you. They cannot use their influence to impress you. They cannot use their charisma to distract you. You have pierced through the costume and seen the lack of character underneath. You've awakened to the truth that power without purpose is a performance without substance, and performances don't move you anymore. You're not looking for someone who can dominate a room, you're looking for someone who can carry a vision. You're not seeking to be led by noise, but by direction, and they can't give you that because everything they built was meant to elevate them, not empower others. This sentence is more than a dismissal, it's a standard. It says, I know what real power looks like, and yours doesn't measure up. It calls out the difference between control and calling. A narcissist uses power to manipulate outcomes. A person of purpose uses power to fulfill assignments. One demands submission, the other inspires transformation. And when you recognize the difference, you no longer bow to empty crowns. You no longer chase approval from people who are insecure in their own identity. You no longer feel the need to be chosen by someone who doesn't even know why they've been given influence in the first place. You walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. There is something profoundly threatening about a soul that no longer responds to status. A narcissist wants to be needed, admired, feared, even envied, but when you no longer give them those responses, they begin to unravel, because your indifference to their greatness is the mirror they've been trying to avoid. It reflects that without your admiration, they are just a person, flawed, insecure, and unsure, and that terrifies them because they don't build real connection. They build dependency. They don't serve. They seduce. But you are no longer seduced. You are no longer impressed by volume over vision. You are no longer swayed by appearance without depth. And you are no longer confused about what power is meant for. Power is sacred. It is not something to be flaunted. It is something to be stewarded. It was never meant to inflate egos. It was meant to carry burdens. When you say, I am not impressed by power without purpose, you are declaring that your loyalty cannot be bought, your respect cannot be manipulated, and your discernment cannot be dulled by theatrics. You are anchoring your values in what is eternal, not what is loud. You are choosing alignment over applause, and you are no longer afraid to walk away from anyone who uses power to glorify self instead of fulfilling destiny. So stand with your head high. Say it when the pressure to conform is heavy. Say it when they wave their achievements in your face. Say it when they try to intimidate you with what they've built. I am not impressed by power without purpose. That one sentence removes their mask. It declares that unless power lifts others, it is nothing more than ego on display. You are not impressed by dominance without direction, confidence without calling, or influence without integrity. You are after something deeper, something eternal. That kind of vision cannot be seduced, cannot be silenced, and cannot be controlled. And that is exactly why the narcissist will fear you forever. Manipulation loses its grip when identity is rooted in truth. This is not just a statement, it is a spiritual law. It is the key that unlocks every chain a narcissist tries to place around your soul. You see, manipulation doesn't begin in their hands. It begins in your uncertainty. It is only when you do not know who you are that someone else can define you. It is only when you are disconnected from truth that you become vulnerable to deception. Narcissists are masters at exploiting confusion. They prey on the places in you that are still searching, still unsure, still hoping for approval. That's the entry point. That's where the hooks go in. But once you anchor your identity in truth, once you step into the unshakable reality of who you are, those hooks fall out. They no longer work. The game collapses. Their words lose their sting. Their silence loses its power. Their tactics lose their effectiveness. Because now the foundation has shifted. You are no longer standing on feelings, opinions, or memories. You are standing on truth. And truth is immovable. Truth is not simply a set of facts. It is a spiritual reality. It is the divine knowledge of who you are, why you were created, and what you are called to. When your identity is rooted in truth, manipulation becomes noise in the background. You can hear it, but it doesn't affect your direction. You can see it, but it doesn't distort your vision. You can feel it trying to pull on you, but you do not move. Because when you are rooted, you cannot be rerouted. That's what makes you dangerous to a narcissist. They don't fear your anger, your confrontation, or your distance. They fear your clarity, and clarity comes from truth. It comes from knowing, without needing external confirmation, who you are at your core. It comes from standing in the full weight of your worth without apology, without shrinking, and without compromise. Narcissists need your confusion to thrive. They depend on your internal instability to maintain their external control. They need you to question yourself, doubt yourself, and search for yourself in their eyes, because as long as you need them to define you, they can shape you. As long as you need them to affirm you, they can withhold affirmation to control you. As long as you need their love, they can manipulate your emotions to serve their ego. But the moment you wake up and realize, I don't need your version of me, I already have the truth, their tools fall flat. They will accuse you, criticize you, shame you, but it will not stick. Because when your identity is wrapped in truth, you become unshakable. You don't get pulled into arguments that were designed to confuse you. You don't explain yourself endlessly to people who have already made up their mind. You don't defend your worth to someone who only values you when you're submissive to their control. You simply stand. This kind of rooted identity does not come overnight. It is forged through fire. It comes after seasons of confusion, tears, self-doubt, and soul-searching. It comes after you've been played, used, discarded, and gaslit. It comes after you've been left questioning if you were the problem. But through that pain, you reach a breaking point, and that breaking point becomes a birthing place. You stop asking who you are based on how they treat you, and you start discovering who you are based on who created you. You trade their narrative for divine truth. You stop identifying with your trauma, and you start aligning with your purpose. And in that moment, when you root your identity in unchanging truth, the cycle breaks. The manipulation shatters because no one can use against you what you've already resolved within yourself. Let me say this clearly, the most dangerous person to a narcissist is not the loudest. It's the one who no longer reacts. The one who is not moved by praise or punishment. The one who doesn't chase after love that is only given in fragments. The one who has seen the pattern and stepped out of it. That's the one they cannot control. Because control needs chaos, and truth is the end of chaos. Once you step into truth, you stop internalizing their moods. You stop measuring your value by their affection. You stop letting their silence make you question your reality. You see through the manipulation, you name it, and once it's named, it loses its power. That's the authority that comes from truth. It breaks every disguise, every tactic, every illusion. Identity rooted in truth makes you whole. And wholeness is unattractive to manipulators. They want brokenness because brokenness is easier to manage. Broken people are more likely to accept crumbs. Whole people demand tables. Broken people shrink when criticized. Whole people discern when someone's criticism is projection. Broken people look for healing in those who hurt them. Whole people look for alignment with those who speak life. So when you are whole, when you are rooted, when you no longer depend on dysfunction to feel significant, the narcissist loses their grip, not because they let go, but because you outgrew the grip itself. You became too strong for the bait, too focused for the distraction, too aware for the trap. Speak it over yourself every day. Manipulation loses its grip when identity is rooted in truth. Say it until it becomes the foundation under your feet. Say it until no lie can shake it, no tactic can twist it, and no loss can strip it. Say it until you walk into rooms and no longer wonder if you belong, because you know you do. Say it until your presence is no longer a reaction to others, but a reflection of your assignment. Say it until every version of you that was molded by pain, by fear, by rejection, begins to fade. Say it until the real you, the unshakable, unmovable, unapologetically whole version of you rises. You are not here to be defined by broken people. You are here to be a reflection of the truth that created you. When you live from that place, manipulation no longer works, because truth is not just protection. It is power. It's the power to see clearly, to stand boldly, and to love freely without bondage. And that kind of freedom, the kind rooted in truth, is the greatest fear of every narcissist who ever thought they could own you. Your silence will never make me forget my value. This sentence is the anthem of every soul that has decided to rise after being ignored, dismissed, or emotionally starved. It is a declaration that breaks one of the narcissist's most insidious tactics, emotional silence. You see, silence is not just the absence of words. In the hands of a narcissist, it is a weapon. It is punishment. It is control masked as distance. They don't always yell to manipulate. They withhold. They use silence to create confusion, to destabilize your sense of self, worth, to make you question what you did wrong, to leave you wandering in emotional limbo, searching for validation that never comes. But the moment you say, "Your silence will never make me forget my value," the game ends. The moment you stop interpreting their silence as your deficiency and start seeing it as their strategy, you cut the cords that tied your worth to their attention. And that is when they realize you have become someone they can no longer control. Narcissists master the art of emotional starvation. They know that silence makes you lean in. They know that if they withhold long enough, you will begin to perform, to chase, to beg, to explain. But what they really want is not an apology. They want submission. They want to see if they still have the power to make you question yourself. They want you to doubt your place in their life, to feel unsafe in your connection with them. That's the real goal, not communication, but control. Because if they can create distance without giving you closure, they get to dictate the terms of your emotional stability. But once you realize the silence is not a reflection of your value, but a mirror of their manipulation, everything shifts. You stop blaming yourself for the void. You stop trying to earn attention that was deliberately withheld. You stop measuring your worth by someone's refusal to respond. Here's the truth. Emotionally healthy people communicate, even when it's hard. They don't punish you with silence. They don't use distance as a device to dominate. So when someone consistently meets your vulnerability with absence, it's not a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a revelation of their immaturity. And when you realize that, silence no longer holds you hostage. You stop checking your phone for a message that will never come. You stop rehearsing the conversation you hope to have. You stop needing the apology they'll never give or the clarity they refuse to offer. Because your identity no longer depends on being heard by them. You have heard yourself. You have affirmed your truth. And you are no longer waiting for someone to validate what you already know. This is the core of it. Value remembered is power reclaimed. When you remember who you are, you don't fall apart when someone ignores you. When you remember what you bring to the table, you don't shrink because someone got up and walked away. When you know your worth, silence becomes background noise, not the soundtrack of your identity. You become immune to the punishment of withdrawal. You become unbothered by the manipulation of neglect, not because it doesn't hurt. Yes, it stings, but because you've decided that your value cannot be held hostage by someone else's emotional immaturity. The most dangerous kind of strength is not loud, it's still. It's the kind of strength that can sit in silence and still stand tall. It's the kind of power that doesn't chase people who flee to feel superior. It's the kind of resilience that doesn't beg to be chosen. And when a narcissist realizes that their silence no longer disturbs your peace, they panic, because it means the last string of control they had over your heart has snapped. It means you've grown, you've healed, you've ascended, and now their absence no longer feels like a threat, it feels like protection. You stop seeing the lack of communication as abandonment and start seeing it as clarity. If someone cannot honor your presence, their silence is a gift. Let them keep it. Remember, silence does not speak louder than words unless you let it. When your mind is not rooted in truth, silence becomes a story, and it usually tells the wrong one. You begin to imagine rejection. You begin to internalize blame. You begin to minimize your own needs, thinking maybe you expected too much. But when you are grounded, when your value is anchored in your identity, not in someone's attention, you don't allow silence to narrate lies. You don't let it make you feel invisible. You don't let it shake your sense of self. Instead, you let it speak for them, because silence too is communication. And when someone chooses to withhold presence, respect, or communication, they are also revealing the capacity they have, or don't have, to love you well. So instead of chasing silence, you rise above it. Instead of shrinking under it, you grow beyond it. You shift your focus from who isn't showing up to who you're becoming in their absence. Because every time they disappear, they're giving you space to discover the version of you that doesn't rely on temporary people for permanent identity. Every time they fall silent, you learn to speak life over yourself. You learn to honor your own voice. You learn to validate your own presence. And that is the true fear of a narcissist, not that you hate them, but that you have learned to live, to breathe, and to thrive without their attention. So declare it. Your silence will never make me forget my value. Let it echo in your spirit when the text goes unanswered. Let it anchor you when the room grows quiet. Let it strengthen you when they weaponize withdrawal. You are not forgettable just because someone refuses to remember you. You are not unworthy because someone stops speaking. You are not too much or not enough. You are simply in the wrong place to be seen correctly. And silence has become your signal, not to beg, but to bless your own path forward. You were never created to be defined by someone's ability to respond to you. Your identity is older than their silence, deeper than their presence, and stronger than their withdrawal. Your voice matters, your heart matters, and your value is not negotiable. So don't let their silence become your insecurity. Let it become your clarity. Let it confirm what needed to be confirmed, that your worth was never meant to be a question in someone else's mind. It was always meant to be a conviction in your own.